Welcome to today's coding lesson. Today you are going to start with this link. Now this link is in the video description below the video or on the page that you came from. So you will click that link to open this project. You'll see the cat in a city with some cheesy poofs, exactly what you need to learn today. And you want to make sure up in the top right, you are signed in. If you do not see your username, then you need to go ahead and sign in with your username and password. Now, once you are signed in, it's very important that you find this remix button in the top middle of your screen and press that remix button. All that does, again, is make a copy of this program on your account that you can then edit and change. So what we have here is we have a cat that is trying to get to the cheesy poofs, and our mission is to make him answer some math questions to get there. So what we are going to do first is we need to teach the cat to listen to us. So the cat is going to learn to listen to the keyboard. So right now when you press run, all he does is he uses this say block to pop up a word bubble, which is nice. Now what I want to do is I want him to ask me a question and I want to answer him back. So what we're going to look for is over here on the left, if you go to the sensing block, which is this blue, and you are looking for a block that we have never used before. And instead of say, it is ask. So ask is very similar to say in the fact that it has some words here that will show up in the speech bubble. Let's ask a math question. So I don't care what your name is. I do care what your name is, and you could ask that, but let's do some math questions. So I'm going to say, I'll do multiplication. What is 5 times 2 ? Now watch how neat this is. When I hit run, there's the say block, and then when it gets to the ask block, it does have the word bubble with the question, but then suddenly, this is totally new, this block also gives me a little spot here to respond. So I can type in what I think the answer is. Now watch this. When I press enter, whatever I type right here, if I type 100, that 100 is going to go into this very special spot. Boom. So whatever number I typed from the keyboard got put in a little spot in your computer's brain, and it got a name. It got named answer. Let's try something interesting. Let's go over to the looks block again, and I'm going to grab the say block. What I would love to do is to then have the cat say, like, you answered, and then whatever they answered. Now here's the problem. Right now, when I'm writing the code, I'm not psychic, and I don't know what they're going to answer. So if I said you answered 10, when I run the program, if they say 456, I'm wrong, right? The cat, I can't predict what they're going to type in, but here's what's neat. Whatever number they did type in got a special name. So I can call that number by his name and say, hey, you come here. But I have to do a little trick here. If I go into sensing, you'll notice in that blue, there's this little spot called answer, and watch how neat this is. So instead of me right now, when I'm writing the code, trying to predict what they're going to say, I'm just going to tell the cat, say whatever number went into that spot, whatever their answer was. So now my cat is really like a parrot, because I can say, when I type in whatever I type in, let's type in 897. When I press enter, that 897 went into that answer spot, got that name, and then I let the cat say in his speech bubble whatever that number was. Crazy. Here we go. We've got an ask block, and then we're following up with a say. I want to make this a little fancier, right? Because I want to kind of say you answered and then whatever that answer was. So we're going to have to get a little more help. If I go to the operators tab, there is a join. And notice it's kind of like a puzzle, like this will fit in there, which will fit in there. Now, join is really just like you're gluing together pieces of a sentence. So I want to start my sentence with, you answered, space, don't forget that space. And then instead of banana, I'm going to say you answered, and then I'm going to glue on whatever their answer was. And again, I'm going to call it by name because I don't know what number it is. It could be any number. And then I'm going to take that join and I'm going to put it inside of the say. Woo. So we've got, you ask a question, they typed in their number, and then the cat will do some fancy gluing here. It's going to glue together you answered and then fill in the blank with whatever their answer was. Now watch how cool this is. Of course he's lying because he's not asking me 4 questions, but I'm going to say 721 when I press enter. 721. So the 721 went from my keyboard into this answer, right? He got that nickname, and then when the code is running, it takes that 721 and puts it right there in that speech bubble. So it's all just a placeholder. So here's what I want you to do. Let's pause the video real quick and catch up. Make sure you've got the ask, the say, and the join. Okay, now you've got all of the asking and the answering together. What we need to do now is get really fancy, and we need our computer to make a decision. It's going to do one thing or another depending on what's happening at that moment. So to do this, we are going to use a block called an if-else. And if-else is really crazy. It kind of looks like a Big Mac. Like it's got, your top hamburger bun, your bottom hamburger bun, middle hamburger bun, and some hamburger in there. So it looks a little like a Big Mac from McDonald's, but that's all right. So when you are writing an if-else statement, basically you need to ask a question, and then the computer will decide what to do. So you tell the computer, ask this question to yourself. Then if the answer to that question is yes, do this first thing. But when the answer to that question is no, go do another. And that sounds really complicated until you think about it like something you do every day. So most of the time you get up and go to school on a weekday. So basically you have this decision where you ask a question, is it a weekday? So if, and then question, is it a weekday? When the answer to that is yes, then you do this. I'm going to get up and go to school. Boom. But sometimes when you ask yourself that question, the answer is no, it's not a weekday, right? Saturday morning. Then you will skip this part of the hamburger and go down to the other part of the hamburger and sleep in instead. So you're going to do with an if-else statement, you either do this or you do that, and you decide based on a question. When the answer to the question is yes, you do the first thing. Answer to the question is no, you do that other thing. So let's go find that block. That block is in control, and there are a couple different, there's an if without an else, but what we are going to use is this if-else. And again, it looks a little like we have seen the forever loop that kind of looked like a dinosaur that's trying to eat something, right? But what we want now is this if-else, which I guess kind of looks like a double-decker dinosaur, but I'm going to think about it like a Big Mac. I need to ask a question and then decide one way or the other. So let's actually fill in the hamburger part, and then we will come back and fill in the question part. So we're going to work backwards. But let's grab some say blocks. So I'm going to put a say block here as my first piece of hamburger and tell them whatever you would say to somebody who got the math question right. Good job, or way to go, or that was awesome, whatever you feel like. Then I'm going to grab another say block, and don't be too mean, but let's think about what you would say to somebody when they get it wrong. Sorry, or whatever message you want to say, but don't be too mean. What's going to happen is once they type in their number, I'm going to say, oh, you said this. I'm definitely going to say, hey, you said this. Then I'm going to make a decision, either tell them they did good or tell them they did bad, one of the two. So what we need right here is a question, and let's go ask that question. If you go into the green operators tab, you are looking for the equals. Now they all kind of look the same there, so don't get the greater than, don't get the less than, grab the equals and put it here. And this is a really crazy start. It says if nothing equals 50. Well, that doesn't make any sense to me. So let's put in what two things are we going to compare, right? How do we know they got it right? We know that they got it right if the thing that they typed is equal to whatever the right answer is. Right? So I need to compare whatever number they typed, and I need to compare that to the real answer to this question. So I'm going to grab that answer block again, and don't forget, that's just a nickname for whatever that number happens to be, because I don't know what it is, right? I don't know what they're going to type in. So if whatever they typed in is equal to, and I don't want them to say 50, my question is, what's 5 times 2? And so my right answer is 10. So I'm going to say if whatever they typed is equal to the real answer, that was good. But if the answer to that question is no, the answer was not, whatever they typed in was not 10, then let's come down here and say sorry. So let's pause the video if you need to. That's a lot of blocks right there. Make sure you have code that looks like that. And now that you're caught up, let's go try this out. So when I hit run, I'm going to ask you 4 questions. Liar. What is 5 times 2? Now, here it comes. When I say 10, so I'm going to type in 10. That 10 is going to go into this little spot and get a nickname. And then the code is going to use that, whatever they type, and they're going to put it right here and compare it to 10. So it's kind of almost like passing notes in class. So here we go. When I typed in that 10 was equal to 10, so it said good job, right? Let's run it again. This time type in something crazy. 743, you answered 743. That was not equal to 10, so it skipped the good job and said that was wrong. Gorgeous. Gorgeous. Look how smart your computer is. Your computer can grade your math homework. Now, one more thing that we want, we can actually make this more complicated. We can do more than one thing if they did a good job or a bad job. So what we want is, in the motion, I want to grab a move block. Now make sure you put this in the right spot. Put it in the you did a good job spot, not the bad job spot. And I want him to move 100 steps. Now I'm cheating because I know that this cat is 400 steps away from the cheesy poops because I made it that way. So what I'm going to say is, we're going to ask 4 questions, and if he gets all 4 of them right, he would end up taking 400 steps and make it to the cheesy poops. If you want to get extra fancy, you could put in sounds. You could also put in costume changes, so you could make him look different if he got it right or got it wrong. So you can get as fancy as you want here. Okay, it's time to make our cat less of a liar. Because right now he says, I'm going to ask you 4 questions. And that is not true. So take a look at your code. I'm going to show you how to be a little lazy. Now we're going to end up with a lot of code, and that's all right. After I'm going to ask you 4 questions, then you have the part where you actually ask a question. So I'm just going to detach it just a little bit to take a look at it. This is the part where he asks the question. He says, oh yeah, and then he grades your work. That part right there, that chunk of code, is what we want to happen 4 times. I don't want to drag those things out here 4 times and try to build them, so I'm going to cheat. And if I go to the ask block and right click with my mouse on that blue block, I have an option to duplicate. Now be really careful, because now you've got a bunch of code flying around. I want to bring this code down here and connect it. You can cheat with some duplicating and then just change the parts that you want. Now, someday when you're a really fancy programmer, there's tons of ways to do this with loops and functions and all sorts of really cool stuff. So someday I'll show you how to do this with even less code, and it will be beautiful. But for today, we're going to duplicate and then just make some changes. So then I want you to go through here and think about, okay, what part of this needs to change, right? And just be really careful, especially with your right answer, because that's an easy thing to mess up. So I would love for you to, here's your mission, pause this video and use this duplicate trick. I would like for you to have 4 math questions that check their answer and move him forward. When you have all 4 of them together, I want you to then run your program, get all 4 of your questions right, and make sure that he ends up on the cheesy poofs. Okay, now that you got your 4 questions, be careful. Make sure you give this a run and test it out. Now, one last challenge. in the cat's brain, his brain just has got very long. It's a long chunk of code. And again, someday we'll learn how to do this with less code eventually. But down at the very, very, very bottom, after he's answered 4 questions, here's what we want to do. We want to make a decision about whether he won the game or not. So let's go to sensing, and in blue, you have this crazy thing that we've never used called the touching block. And you, again, you're in the brain of the cat, and so the cat can ask himself, am I touching Cheesy Poofs? If you are touching Cheesy Poofs, then you win, but maybe you're not and you lost. So here's what I want you to do. Right here at the very bottom, I want you to add on code. Now you're gonna have to make a decision, right? And you know how to make a decision. Either he's touching the Cheesy Poofs and he's a winner, or he's not. And what I will say is combine that decision making with some switching of your backdrops, because you have a couple of different backdrops, the city, a winner, and a loser backdrop. And fancy this up. Throw in some sounds, throw in some costumes, and make this feel a little more your own. I'll show you exactly what I mean here. Good luck, and I hope your game turns out awesome.